When you first get started, no matter what DAW you're using, no matter what audio program you're working with, the general process of making music comes down to sort of a three area workflow. And I would not consider it to be a direct path from A to B to C. Like, if I just open up JS Paint, like, it's not going to be the sort of consideration where it's like, first, do X. Do X right here. Then, go here. This is what people usually think of learning to make music or learning a lot of skills. They think it's supposed to be this direct line. We go to X, then we go to Y, then we go to Z. And that allows us to learn how to do the thing. And then maybe we go back to X, but usually, you know, that's supposed to be the path. But that's really not how it works. That's not how music making works. It's not a linear path. It's much more like Family Circus. Like if you've ever seen a Family Circus comic. So this is really how music making works. You're just sort of wandering around, just grabbing at random bits of information and just hoping that it all comes together. This is pretty much what happens. Now, there's ways to streamline this, but the process is still overall just gonna be, I'm going over here for a moment, but then I have to move over here, and then I have to move back to the space, but while I'm over here, I have to take a brief detour over to this other subject. And then while I'm learning that other subject, I go back to this second subject we were working on, but then we run back here, and then we introduce ourselves to a new subject, and that new subject connects us back with our very first subject, so now we have to spend more time learning that first subject, and then we have to go back to that third subject we learned, and that third subject introduces us to the second subject again, which introduces us to the fourth subject, which then introduces us to a fifth new subject, and then there's all of this bullshit that just runs around, and you'll get so many different pieces of information that are all going to feel essentially contradictory at points. And it's frustrating, but it's okay because we can come back to this and we can try to find some sort of hybrid, right? We can find some way of blending together what is honestly the true path. Like, I hate to say it, but this is the end goal. You're going to spend a lot of time doing this. But we can find a way to make this work, where instead of necessarily having these linear paths, instead what we're going to work on is an approach I've seen in like programming classes and other educational courses on how to teach certain skills, which is more of a spiral, right? We're gonna start here, and then we're gonna touch on here. And then we're gonna keep moving past to go here. And then we're gonna touch on this again. But now we've gained all of this extra knowledge. We're gonna circle back here. We're gonna come over here. And then we're going to circle back again. And now we have even more knowledge of everything. And then we're just going to keep circling around this spiral staircase until we end up getting to a point where really you've mastered all of these basics. So now you can go off on this winding path on your own, but you'll have some sort of safety point where it's like you have this foundation, which is what I think a lot of people ask questions on, which is like, I need to get all of these fundamentals, but I don't know what fundamental to focus on. So don't. Instead, just start circling around. So we're going to break making music up into three basic categories, right? And then, like I said, you're going to be able to just kind of explore and find your way into what you need to know. So, circling back to here, what is X, what is Y, and what is Z? I picked 3 for a reason. X is going to be your DAW, your digital audio workstation, the program that you use to write everything and control everything and blend everything together to create your song. Y is going to be what I'll call writing. And then Z, we will call mixing. Now, these all encompass each other. That's why we are doing this spiral. Learning the DAW will teach you how to write and how to mix. Learning to write will teach you how to use your DAW and will also teach you how to mix those elements. Learning how to mix will teach you how to use your DAW and teach you how to write music. So rather than like honing in, again, we're going to spiral around. Circling back to Ableton Live. This is my DAW of choice. We're actually not going to be using this for a fair bit of this little topic right here, but I will be doing a lot of my actual writing and mixing using this. But I'm going to give you some suggestions as far as alternatives for digital audio workstations. The first one I'm going to suggest is if you're on Macintosh or if you're on an Apple computer, use GarageBand, because GarageBand is free. I don't have to pay extra money to Apple to use GarageBand. And honestly, GarageBand is a totally acceptable DAW. I know people who have written albums inside of GarageBand, and they sound, I'd say, 85 to 95% as good as a song written in Pro Tools, in FL Studio, in Ableton Live, in Cubase, and there are other options. I'm going to show you a couple of other options to start off. If you are not on Mac, then I would recommend probably one of 2 programs to start, right? One would be something called LMMS. I don't recommend this if you are someone who has trouble with a lot of customization, because one thing I've noticed with LMMS is that it tends to require a little bit of setup. But if you don't mind starting off a new program by digging through the options and trying to like set it up the way that you like, LMMS might actually be a pretty good option. And this is a fairly decent DAW, I would say. I've tried it out. I've done a DAW day on LMMS before. I kind of want to do another one in the future, but it's pretty good. It's not bad, and it's available on all platforms. Additionally, there is this thing called Cakewalk by this company BandLab. It used to be owned by this company called SonarWorks, or not SonarWorks. I think Cakewalk might have been the company, or it might have been Sonar, or some company that used to own Cakewalk. But then this company BandLab bought it. It's only available on Windows, but it is pretty much a full-featured DAW. I think you might have to buy certain upgrades, which is kind of shitty, but I think it is a totally valid option. So if you're only on Windows, maybe check out Cakewalk. If you're only on Mac, maybe check out GarageBand. If you want to try something a little bit more open-ended, try LMS on both. In terms of stuff that is also cheap or free or easy to access, Reaper is another essentially free option. It's free in the same way that WinRAR or Sublime Text is free, in that you just have to say, hey, no, don't, nope, you're supposed to buy me. And then you say, okay, I'll buy you one day. And then you can keep using the program for free forever. But this one requires even more setup than LMMS, so that is something to be aware of. Mixcraft. I have not used or touched Mixcraft. I think this is probably a good DAW. It seems pretty full-featured. So that might be something to look into as well. But the idea here is you don't need to pay any money beyond what you already paid for your computer to learn how to make music. And if you don't have a computer, I would say don't fear, because there are programs that exist on your phone that you can use to make music. You might have to pay a couple of like $2 to $4, $10 purchases, but I know people who have written music on their phones. I have a bunch of apps on my phone that I can use to write music, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it. I have iMachine, which is made by Native Instruments. I actually have GarageBand on here. I used to have FL Studio Mobile on here. I have a bunch of little like polyrhythmic things to kind of come up with new melodies. But like there's so many like almost fully featured DAWs using the platform or using the mobile platform. What do you think about using a Push 2 as a DAW with Ableton? I like the Push 2. I don't have one. It's expensive as fuck. I wouldn't recommend it if you don't have a lot of money because it's really not like a huge improvement, but it's not bad. Like if you want it and you have the money to get it, I'd say go for it. But this whole thing is about how you don't need to spend money. So it's kind of a weird thing to say, hey, does this thing that costs like $800 work well with this program that's designed to work with this $800 hardware? Yeah, I'd say they're designed to work pretty well, but they're expensive as fuck. But it's just a controller. It's just a MIDI controller, right? All you're saying is, hey, is this $800 keyboard going to let me play keys? Yes. An $800 keyboard will let you play keys. So I get what you're saying. It's not going to make your music better. I'll just say that. Getting a Push is not going to buy, and this is kind of a universal thing. Buying tools will not make you a better musician. Buying tools will allow you to go from a limited musician to an unlimited musician. That is the only distinction that can be made from putting money into peripherals, into third-party plugins, into anything that's not your computer, your audio interface, your headphones or speakers, arguably your DAW, but thank you for the bit. But it's not really a big deal when you are just starting off. Because remember, this whole thing is for beginners. And I'm not talking about beginners as in, I've been making music for a year. This is for people who have never made music before. That's what this whole thing is about. This is about anyone who has always wanted to get started in music but has never known how. This is for people who are just getting to a point where they feel like they can choose a kind of thing. Like if you're in like elementary school or middle school, this is hopefully going to be maybe a bit too highbrow, but also hopefully accessible. But that being said, all of these things are just options. Do some Googling, look up like free DAWs. Don't download them, but look for reviews. Look for consumer reviews. Look for blog reviews. Ask people who you know who are into music if they have any ideas about stuff like this. Definitely try demos. But don't download the demos when you're just researching. Just figure out which 2 or 3 you want to try and get the demos for those. Now, let's actually get started with GarageBand and just look at sort of the basic process to writing music. Or actually, we're not going to write music yet. We're going to learn our DAW first, because that is, like I said, kind of the first thing we're going to be starting on. Then we're going to circle around to writing music. Then we're going to circle on to mixing, circle back to the DAW. So the first thing that we're going to do is just click our way around everything in this project. First things first, I'm just going to click the first thing, click create. And now we have an electric piano, we have all this stuff, and it brings up this musical typing keyboard. So now, I can start to play music. I don't have to do anything to begin writing, technically, but it will help, I think, if you don't dive right into composing and spend a little bit of time clicking, as I was saying. So let's click back and forth here. Oh, and see, okay, that turns off the musical typing keyboard. I started pressing, but you can also see as I'm pressing keys on my keyboard, things are happening behind this screen. So go back here. So now I can see that these buttons are doing a lot of different things. So just press, before you go anywhere else, press every single button on your keyboard. You can click on it, but you can't quite play things. So like, what happens if I do F and then press 1? Ooh. That's so funny. But you'll start to see kind of what's happening. It's kind of giving you the information, of course, but knowing like pitch bend means literally taking the sound, and it sounds like it's literally bending it down to be lower or higher. Let's play a note and start playing with the rest of these. So at least on this instrument, as this comes up, there's more of the sound moving. It feels like it's moving left and right as we go. And the higher up we go, the more extreme it moves between my left and right ear. This is called modulation. So modulation must have something to do with either moving the sound left and right or moving the sound in some way. We don't quite know if this is going to change for different instruments, but we're just exploring. We're just trying to see what happens when we click around. You can see we have all these notes on the keyboard that we can play. We can play as many of them as we can fit our fingers on the keyboard. Oh, never mind. You can only do 6 notes. I take it back. You can do a 6-note chord, which isn't that bad. You can do a lot with 6 notes. But you can make pretty colorful chords. Just using the built-in keyboard. Now what happens with C and X? So you can also see up here what's happening. It's moving this limited range we have up and down the keyboard. What about C and V? So as I bring it up, this velocity number changes, and velocity seems to be so it seems to be making it different in volume. It seems to be adjusting the volume of the notes, but it's also kind of changing the tone, right? You can hear down here when the velocity is like under 80. It sounds very soft, right? But up here, not only is it getting louder, it's getting kind of more bright is a way I would try and describe it. It's sounding a little bit more aggressive. There's more detail to the sound. So velocity must connect not just with volume, but with how the sound actually changes over time or as you play it. But that's given us everything. We have now clicked on everything in this interface. So let's close it. Now, we have everything else on this screen. You can see there's this thing that I've been kind of ignoring, the quick help view. I'm going to keep this on for now because it's going to tell us what's going on the screen. So now, this is my favorite way of learning a DAW. Different DAWs will have different ways of showing this. If it doesn't have that, don't worry. This process will still work. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on everything once. We've already clicked on this thing, so we know what it's doing. Let's click on this. Oh, closes the view. Right here, our library. So this is the library button. You can see there's also a letter next to it, library button Y. So if I press Y, ooh. Now, instead of having to always click, I've learned a hot key, a pre-made binding that will allow us to use the interface more effectively. This looks like it's shift / which is also, if you look at your keyboard, if I press slash and then I do shift / it's just a question mark. So that's a common one. If you activate the question mark in a lot of DAWs, it will give you essentially some sort of help view. What is this? The Smart Controls button. Oh, so Smart Controls B seems to be down here. Okay. Now, Editor's button E. Ooh. So E brings up this view right here, which seems to be the notes of a piano. And then if I press B, it switches back. So B and E work on the same panel here inside of GarageBand. So now we're learning how to move between them a little bit faster. You can see this one, rewind, doesn't seem to do anything. Forward, oh, forward seems to be moving this little marker right here. It says move the playhead. So now we're learning the names of things. This is called the playhead. You can see when you hover over it, it tells you what's going on. So now the back button moves us back in time, forward moves us forward, just like on a VCR or DVD player. This is go to the beginning button. Okay, so no matter where you're at, if I move this over here, I click this or I press 0, it'll always move it back to the start. And then looks like stop, play, record, cycle, stop does nothing, play. Oh. I press play and all of a sudden we hear a click. This thing lit up. If I press stop, it stops. You can see this is still lit up, but the metronome right here has stopped moving. So now we're learning more about what's going on. Let's press 0 here. So stop is 0 and go back to the beginning is also 0. Now record. What happens if I press record? Oop. So we see this counted down, right? Let me go back. Go back to the beginning with 0, and then record is with R. So I'm going to try and do this with just R. I'm going to press R and see what happens. This goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, then 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this seems to connect with this channel. Nothing seems to be happening yet, but there's a reason for that. We can see this has turned red, this is turned red, this is lit up red. So let's see what this one is. Cycle button. Oop. Cycle button seemed to turn on this yellow thing. Now let's try playing. See what happens with this. So what is cycle? Oop. It doesn't go past the edge of this right boundary for this yellow bar. So cycle is going to allow us to loop through whatever segment of audio we're working on, which will be very useful down the road. We have this thing, Beats Position Display, which you can actually adjust and control physically, which is pretty useful. Can I type in a value? Let's try double clicking and typing 2. Right click, nope. So you cannot, oh, there you go. If you double click, you get that. You can see now it's 001.1, so let's try 042.0. Moves us to 33.1 because that's the end of our region. You can actually keep going if you let it play, but certain DAWs will give you kind of like a rough limit on the length of your track until you've recorded more stuff. But like as you can see, Never mind. Can I just play? Really? Can I not just add stuff? It's been a while since I've used GarageBand, so I just want to see if this actually will go forwards more. Oh, do you really only have 32 bars to work with in GarageBand? Huh. Today I learned. Maybe you can record past it? Oh, you can record past it. Yeah, you can record past it. Okay, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. You can record longer, and it looks like it adds chunks. Okay, so still learning, clicking things around and asking questions, trying to see what happens. Let's go back to the beginning. Tempo, so just that. So tempo appears to adjust not just what we're hearing with that click, but also where this is hitting. Set this back to 120. See here it says time signature. You can see there's a couple of options here. I wouldn't necessarily worry about that, but click on it and see what it sounds like. Oh, interesting. 6/8, and you can just go through, click on all these. Key signature display, you can see this is just going to show you keys. You'll see it's not going to do anything visual, but it will help you in other parts of your song. It's kind of a reference where it's like, okay, so what key do I want to write this song in? In F minor. Now I know my whole song is going to be in the key of F minor, which we'll worry about when we get to writing. Right now, we're just trying to learn our DAW. We've never used this program before, so let's just try and familiarize ourselves with it. How's it going, Yukato? Down here we got the tuner button, which doesn't seem to be working, which you can use to tune instruments connected to your computer. So if we had some sort of virtual instrument, maybe not virtual instrument, but some sort of like a synthesizer or a guitar that we're recording with our microphone, the tuner will help us lock that into the pitches we need. And here we have the count in button. Toggle the count in before recording starts. Ooh, okay. So we can toggle that. Because remember, if we go back to the beginning and press record, we see it starts early. I'm going to bring this also back to 4/4. So we get that 4 count. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. If we go back and turn this off, Shift K is the hotkey. Turn this off, press record. It immediately starts. So now we know that depending upon where we're at, if we want to have time to prepare ourselves, we want to have this count in button to count us in. Metronome looks to be K, not M, which is for a reason. But now we can choose to have that click or not have it. So let's keep moving over this top menu. I'm not going to go through everything in here. I'm just showing you kind of like this top is like, or this top row as just kind of the way that I would explore. And I want you to do the same thing. You can see we have a volume slider, which just changes how loud everything is. I would recommend, typically, don't touch this. It's useful, but I would say in most cases, you don't want to touch this one because as you can see, you have another one right here. And once we get to mixing, I'll talk about how it's better to work with this than with this, but don't worry about it. Finally, we got Notepad, ooh, which now I can write notes to myself. Hi, Musar. How are you today? I'm doing good, Musar. Thanks for asking. This is totally not an insane thing to do, right? Anyways, excuse me, but yeah, the notepad's really useful. I wish more DAWs had that. I wish more DAWs had a notepad. This looks like a loop browser button. Ooh, which opens up this thing. Ooh, what's here? Indexing Apple Loops library. I have no idea what this is. I mean, I know, but I have no idea what this is. Oh, but look at this. What is this? Oh! Oh, these are not downloaded. So I'd have to download these. I'll just download this one just so you can see what's going on. But you can see you can download individual sounds and stuff, and it's like, it's big old loops. So you might not even have to write all of your own music when you're starting off. You can just play around with loops. And we'll get to that when we get to the writing part. I don't want to go too deep into that right now. But let's keep going. Last but not least, media browser button opens up, looks like in the same space as my my loop browser and my notepad over here. Makes sense because they're all in the same section of the screen. And this is where I can go things like, oh, this is a little sample. Looks like I can drag it into my DAW. That assignment doesn't exist, but that's okay. You have these sounds. Explosion, pretty cool. You can see there's now a different track in here. So we've clicked around everything. You can see even these have their own little subheaders of stuff. This help view is going to be really helpful, and other DAWs are going to have their own thing. But hopefully now you kind of see, like, in terms of the icons, you know where to look, where to click. You could see these things. You could even have this on and see things like, oh, well, what's this? Mute button. Oh, there's a mute button. Solo button, that's a thing. Pan balance knob, volume slider. You can see all these things. But before you go too deep into the next thing we're going to do, which is writing, and once you've clicked all of the things on all of these different menus and gotten everything figured out, it's like, oh, well, I know what's going on here, I know what's going on here, I know what's going on here. I've started to learn all these different parts of the sound process. What I can do is, one, click on every single one of these in all of these top menus, which I know is silly, but trust me, it's going to be helpful. And then I want you to just go through your keyboard. Start with the top left button on your keyboard. If I open up like a notepad and show you kind of what I'm gonna type, like this is gonna be your sequence, right? You're gonna do this. And that's a tab. You're just gonna do this. You're just going to go through every single key on your keyboard while you're looking at your DAW just to see what happens. When I press this tilde key, oh, it turns on this thing. What is this thing? This is the catch button. Keep the playhead visible as the project plays. The visible section of the window follows the playhead. So I've moved this over here, and I play. And if it moves past here, I don't see it. But if I press that tilde button, it'll follow. Back to the beginning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like the keys, the number keys, don't seem to do it. Oop. That flashes for some reason. Don't know why. Now tab, Q, W, E, R. Oop. E, R, did things. T. Y. Oop, there's Y. U, I, O. Oop, O opens that thing. Loops. P for the piano roll, I guess. A. Oop, looks up. That opens up a thing. What's that? Surprised it's not showing us. But this is what we would call automation. Don't worry about it. S. Oop. S opens up this solo button. D doesn't seem to do anything. F opens up the files. G, H, I, or H, J, K, L. Just going through, just trying to see everything that happens. Because this will help you in terms of knowing where you want to go. Oop, M does that. Oop. So here's something I noticed. I'm using the comma and the period. Using the comma and the period, I'm able to navigate through my main arrangement without having to touch my keyboard. This has made me faster. I'm officially faster now because I've learned a way to work with the computer without having to constantly click around, find my mouse, figure out where my mouse is. Bam. Just like that. So now, we've done everything I think you need to know to initially familiarize yourself with your DAW. That's how you would make your first day or your first week in Ableton or in GarageBand or in FL Studio or in LMMS or in BandLab or in anything. Just don't even stress about having to make music today, which feels weird, right? You want to learn to make music, but your first week won't even be spent making music. But it'll teach you things, and it'll give you ideas of things you could do to explore. Now, we're going to move on to writing, which was that next step in the spiral that we're going down. Then we're going to talk about mixing, and then we're going to circle back to learning our DAW, because that's going to be more important once we've learned everything else we're going to cover.